Okay, we're continuing with multiplying polynomials, and so today we're going to look at multiplying a binomial by a binomial. So that gets a little bit more complicated, but once we see the pattern for it, remember math is kind of all about patterns. Once you see the pattern, then it's really multiplying a whole bunch of monomials together and collecting like terms. So take a look. Again, we're looking back at something that might be familiar to you. Algebra tiles. And so remember, the name of each algebra tile is actually the area that it covers. So the expression for the area of this whole rectangle is adding up all of the algebra tiles. So remember, the big squares are, and they're green, so they're positive. So that's going to be 3x squared. Got to be patient with me. I'm using my mouse here. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 x's. And 2 little squares, which is 2. Okay. Now, want you to state what the length of the rectangle is. So that's the long part here. So remember, this side of x squared is x. So we've got 3 of them. So that's 3x plus 1, because that's the side of the little, of the x square, is the long side is x and the short side is 1. So the length is 3x plus 1. And the width this way is 1x plus 2. We don't have to show the 1 in front of the x. Okay, so to get area, we can show it, remember, area is length times width for a rectangle. So we can show it as 3x plus 1 times x plus 2. Okay, or the simplified form is the first when we added up all the areas of the individual squares. Okay. So we consider this to be simplified form, remember, because there are no brackets and you've collected all the like terms, if there are any. You basically added up all the different tiles. And this is factored form because remember, it's shown as a multiplication. So factors are numbers or polynomials that are multiplied together, and these are multiplied together. So that's called factored form. So today we really want to learn how to go from factored form to simplified form. Okay, so this example shows the simplified form of the product of two, well, I've already said it a few times, two binomials. Okay, a binomial is 2 terms by 2 terms. Okay, and there's the simplified form. So next part says use rectangles with the following lengths and widths and find the area of each. Since the length and widths given are binomials, this is one method of determining the simplified form of multiplying a binomial by a binomial. So I've kind of drawn some rectangles for you. After this, you're probably not going to do that too much, but in any case, you can see smaller versions, but this is a big square, so that's x times x is x squared, right? And then same thing here, and then we have the x, the rectangles are x and the little ones are 1s. So across this whole side here is x plus 1, so that's 2x plus 1. Okay, this side here is x plus 3. So in factored form, we just show those in brackets. Okay, and simplified form, we just add up all the tiles. So there's 2x squareds, there's 7 x's, and then there's 3 1s. Okay, then same for the next one. You'll notice that's 4 x's plus 1. So the length, and then the width here is 1x plus 2. Okay, so factored form of the area is 4x plus 1 times x plus 2. So that's the same as the area of each individual part, which we've got 4 big squares, which each have an area of x squared. So that's 4x squared. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 x's and 2 ones. So that's 2. So we're going to we have to try to figure out how to get from this form to this form without using triangles, okay? And so actually, we'll do it with the original one. It's right here. So it says explore the terms in the two binomials and its corresponding simplified form. So if you take a look, first term times first term, okay, that gives you 3x squared. Okay, so that's how you can get that part. Notice how last term times last term gives you 2. Okay. But how do we get that 7x? I don't see anything here that multiplies to 7. Well, we have to end up multiplying every term in each bracket. So I haven't multiplied 1 by x yet. Okay, and if I did, that's x. And I haven't multiplied 3 by 2 yet. Okay, so 3x by 2 is 6x. So 1x plus 6x is 7x. So basically, we have to multiply every term in each bracket by every term in the second bracket. So in a binomial times a binomial, that's 4 different things, and then we collect like terms. So I've written it out on the next page in words. So when multiplying two binomials, you can use the acronym FOIL if you like, and I sometimes use that in class. So what this reminds us to do is multiply first terms together. So if I'll just do that again, just copy out, okay. So here, first terms together, that means the first in each bracket. So that's 3x squared. If I was doing this fresh, I would do that. Then the outside terms together. So basically you're starting with 3x and you're multiplying it by everything in the other bracket. So that would be 6x. Then the inside terms. So that means the terms that are closest to each other within each bracket. So that would be plus 1x, which is just x. And then the last terms of each bracket together. So that would be 2. Okay, and then the only like terms are these. So that's where you get 3x squared plus 7x plus 2. Okay. So if this procedure is done correctly, then any number substituted in for x should make the original factored form have the same value as the simplified form. So remember, x represents any number. It's a variable, so you can change the value of x. So this is one way of checking your work rather than just redoing it and maybe making the same mistake. So choose a number, but I wouldn't choose 0, right? Because that would, maybe you forgot the x squared on one of them and you would still get the same value. So I like to choose 1. It's almost as easy as 0. So in my factored form, I'm going to go 3 times 1 plus 1, and then 1 plus 2. I always put the number I substitute in brackets in case it ends up being a negative. But I'm not putting a negative, so if you don't put brackets inside, that's okay. You need the big brackets in the original expression. So that's going to be 3 plus 1 times 1 plus 2. I just got rid of the brackets, so really you don't have to show that step. And now you need to show 4 times 3, and that's 12. Oops. So equals 12. And then here, substitute, that value right away. So 3 times 1, just give me a sec. Do this. Okay, 3 times 1 squared plus 7 times 1 plus 2. So 1 squared is 1 times 3 is 3. 7 times 1 is 7. So that's going to be 12. Okay, so they are equal to each other. All right. So that's a way of checking if you want. So now we're actually going to do these multiplications. It says find the product, write your answer in simplified form. Okay, so first terms together is x squared. Oops. Outside terms together is 5x. Inside terms together is 3x. Last terms together is 15. Okay, so then x squared plus 8x plus 15. Okay, so 4 terms, when you expand out, collect like terms. If these are just a variable and a constant in each of them, it's always going to simplify to 3 terms. Not always like that. We'll see a little bit difference in a bit. Okay, so now a different variable, that's okay. C times 2c is 2c squared. Then c times -1 is -c. And 4 times 2c is 8c. And 4 times -1 is -4. So remember, you're always taking the sign in front of each term and using that in your multiplication. So now your like terms here. -1 plus 7 is -1 plus 8 is 7, C. And you'll notice if the terms in each binomial are in descending order of degree and you follow this order of multiplication, then it will basically be in descending order of degree at the end. Okay, now we have some x's and y's. Still going to follow the same thing. First terms together is 2x squared. Outside terms together is -3, so subtract 3, and there's an x and a y. And then inside is positive 8xy. And last terms is -12y squared. Okay, and then collect like terms. And it's in the correct order. They're all degree 2, but remember you'd like to have the x squared term first, then anything with x's, and then the y squared. Okay. Next we have 25x squared minus 10x plus 10x, and then minus 4. Okay, now negative 10x plus 10x is 0. So this term, this binomials that we've multiplied together actually simplify to just 2 terms. All the other ones have simplified to 3 terms. Sometimes if the variables are all different in each bracket, you won't be able to simplify. It'll be 4 terms. So basically you can end up with 2 terms, 3 terms, or 4 terms. Let's take a look at what made these middle terms add to 0. Well, the outside, when I multiplied it, it was negative 10x, and the inside was positive 10x, because we're multiplying basically the same digits, just with opposite signs. So what we call these binomials are called conjugates. Okay. So conjugates, so they're really binomial conjugates, means that you have the same terms, but the opposite sign in between. And when you have that, you end up with the first term squared. 5x all squared is 25x squared. And the last term is 2 squared is 4 with a subtraction in between. So we call this a difference of squares. Okay, so that's something that can be helpful. If you can notice you're multiplying binomial conjugates together, then you don't have to show the work in between. Now take a look at the next. It's a little bit different in that it's a binomial squared. So we're going to show it the long way. So squared really means two factors that are exactly the same. Okay, and then multiplying those together. So first together, it's going to be 4x squared. Then outside together is plus 6x. Inside together is plus 6x. And last together is plus 9. Okay, and now collect like terms. Okay, so let's look at patterns here. Well, looking at this, you might think, oh, I'm just going to square the 2x. Well, if you do, you get 4x squared, so that's good. Then you'll think, oh, I'm going to square the 3. If you square the 3, you get 9, that's good. But notice how if you just do that, you have a term missing. So really important that you don't miss that term. Okay, I always tell my classes that when a student gives me just 4x squared plus 9, it gives me another gray hair because they're not thinking things through. Okay, this has got a plus in between. It's not like back in the roots and powers unit we did when we just squared everything inside the brackets. There was no adding inside the brackets then. Now there's adding, so there's an extra term in there. So the fast way is to get that middle term. If you didn't show your work, think about multiplying those two terms together, because really that's what we're doing when we do the outside and the inside. We're multiplying them together and they're the same. So if you multiply those together, you get 6x. If you double that, you get 12x. So really that middle term is double the product of the two terms. Okay, so we're going to look at this, see if that works in the next one. So again, we're going to do it the long way. And certainly if you ever forget any of the fast ways for this and the difference of squares, you do it the long way. You show every multiplication term. So 4x times 4x is 4x squared plus 20xy plus 20. Now you might put down, oh, I'm going to fix that just a sec. You might put down 20yx because that's the order it's given in, but then just rearrange it. It's multiplication, so order of multiplying doesn't matter, and we want it in alphabetical order. Besides, that would then make it obvious that it's a like term with the previous one. And then the last term's squared is 25y squared. Okay, so we are going to collect these like terms here. So this is going to be 16x squared plus 40xy plus 25y squared. And again, if the terms were in order to start, alphabetical order, and you follow FOIL, it'll end up being in order anyway. So fast way, we could square 4x, that would be 16x squared. We could square 5y, that would be 25y squared. And then multiply these two together would be 20xy, and double it would be 40xy. Okay, if you wanted to do a fast way. So it might take you a bit, You might not do the fast way this semester in this course, but when you get to 10C, maybe you'll feel comfortable then using the fast way. So here is just sort of a formula for the squaring a binomial, the fast ways. So as I said, you square the first term, you square the last term, and in between you put the product of the two terms doubled. So multiply the two terms together and multiply by 2. Okay. If it's subtracting, then it's the same. Always the first and last terms will be positive, and then the product of these, well, consider that to be negative b. So a times negative b is negative ab, doubled is negative 2b. Okay, so that's where that comes from. And then back to that multiplying conjugates. Remember, when you multiply the outside and the inside, they add to 0, so it's really the first term squared, the last term squared with a subtraction in between. Okay, a difference of squares. Difference means subtract. Okay, so let's use that to help us in filling in some of the boxes here. So we're squaring this binomial. So there's your first term squared. There's an x term and a constant. So the last term squared, 5 squared is 25, so we can fit that in right away. And then the middle term, remember, is the product of these doubled. So 5x doubled is 10x, and we're done. Okay. Now b is a square of a binomial, and now we're given the answer to it. So first term, x squared, is 25x squared. Well, how do we square a number to get 25? We have to square 5. Or take the square root of 25 is 5. So 5x squared is 25x. Notice how we don't have the last term, but we have negative 3 here. Well, that squared is positive 9. And then just check. If we multiply these two together, we get negative 15x. Doubled is negative 30x. So we know we did it correctly. Okay, next one, notice these are conjugates. Same terms, but opposite signs here. Okay, so that means it's going to be a difference of squares. First term squared is given. There's your difference. And 7 squared is 49. Okay. And then here, notice the answer is a difference of squares. And so we can show this as a product of conjugates. So you can tell already 3x times 3x is 9x squared. And then in order to get 16 at the end, 4 times negative 4. Right? And make sure they're conjugates, because then it confirms that there's no middle term there. Okay, so that's it. That's multiplying binomials together. And so you can use the acronym FOIL to help, but always you're going to get 4 terms to start and collect like terms. If they happen to be binomial squared or conjugates, then you can go straight to the final answer. Okay, that's it.